to The Family Skeptical, Parenting Through Nonbelief.
We're a married atheist couple raising two wonderful, strange children. We ask big questions, dissect weird parenting moments, and examine how society ignores or misrepresents families like ours. If you're any stripe of nonbeliever who's involved in raising children, welcome. You are our people.
Our kids have heard all our swears, but yours might not have. So be thoughtful if there are young people listening with you. Pops.
Hi, Moms.
This episode brought to you by construction happening in our home.
True.
Construction making strange noises in the background that we have decided not to stop because we need this to end at some point. I really want a kitchen sink again.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah. But we were away for a week to visit my family. And I don't know if I've ever been so excited about an Airbnb because it was just so nice to have running water near food and actual silverware that wasn't plastic. It was...
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And the Airbnb was so cool. Weird parking, but really cool.
It was very, very pretty. And then we were there over the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
And we had made no plans to see fireworks. And it just so happened that we had a perfect view of fireworks from our Airbnb window. And it was so magical. And we hadn't even kept the kids up because I thought it was sort of pointing in the wrong direction. So I didn't expect to see anything. And then they just started outside the window, and Reader wandered out all upset because they couldn't focus on their book. And then I was like, but just watch the fireworks. And then I went and got Jaeger, and we all cuddled on the couch and had an unexpected in our living room fireworks show. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, it was.
But the drive there is long.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little different this time.
True. I gotta say, we talk about how I've consumed, probably more of these call-in shows than I should have, but it helps me in hearing all the propositions, positions, rebuttals, debunks, whatever.
Explain what kind of call-in shows you're talking about.
It's call-in shows that have to do with, secularism or atheism or anti-theism or science, including biology and paleontology and geology and cosmology, and also theological call-in shows. But what I default to is philosophy because I really like there's something in how my brain works. And I don't want to autist or ramble, but there's something in how my brain works that really loves the idea of algorithms, of distilling processes down to kind of equations. And that includes writing, relationships. I find that if I can make that sort of heuristic, that I have an easier time navigating just as a person or an artist or whatever. That and parenting. But that's why I also love philosophy increasingly, because analytic philosophy is very much like that you have parameters and sometimes variables and sometimes constants and, a flow of these sort of I don't want to say equations, but maybe similar, that yield some sort of result, or they yield a continuing mystery, which is potentially itself really interesting. And I have discovered that the kids like listening to one of the specific debaters that I listen to. And now we do so, maybe 50% of the time when we're driving in the car, doing whatever. And then I tried using it this time on this car trip because the call-in shows can be long and car trips are long. And Jaeger very much loves hearing these shows. Very much likes hearing incoherence and contradiction get shot down. But also I think he, like I, likes hearing the thought process, both successful and unsuccessful, because sometimes hearing somebody have a position that they unsuccessfully argue for can be more illuminating, because maybe you think about it and you're like, oh, wait, I might not agree with their position, but I'm using a similar thought process. Maybe I need to go back and reevaluate my conclusion about X, Y, and Z. And so we listened to like hours of that on this car trip. So I'm sorry, moms.
No.
I know it let you get caught up on your podcast. You could kind of switch it off, and Jaeger and I listened. And it was lovely, but it can be a lot. And it's very specific.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I just think I like that they're engaging with it. So to give people who may not have heard these shows a better sense of them, the host will often kind of propose something for people to call in on, like, prove to me that God is real. That's kind of how it works, right?
Yeah, or something like being gay isn't wrong. That was a big one for Pride Month.
Mm-hmm.
That brought a lot of the bigots out of the woodwork, and they crash out, and it's amazing. But yeah, it's this one creator that I listen to. Allegedly, Ian is their channel. They go either way. They either say God isn't real, or they go the queer ally route, themselves being non-binary. And it's interesting to hear how much of the anti-queer rhetoric like defaults to religiosity and this sort of prescriptive stuff that biology doesn't support and sociology doesn't support, but that, they default to the religious justifications. And so sometimes the conversations bottom out back in the God debate, which is so interesting. And similarly, how often the God debate, when the theists get cornered and angry and lack the humility to like criticize their beliefs, like Ian is happy to criticize their own beliefs, that they revert to anti-trans rhetoric just because trans folks are like the punching bag du jour, right? And it's you can almost set your watch to it. There have been shows with crash outs meaning where the callers just start screaming slurs and cease to engage, and basically their brains shut off because cognitive bias takes over. And there was one where this kid, not kid, like 20-year-old, but still, I guess to me, I could be their father for like over a decade now. But this kid just starts spamming the F slur about gay folks. Like with F slur, speak F, like regularity, like maybe within the space of a minute, 20 of them, just to try to get Ian's channel restricted because of abuse. Not on Ian's part, but because the caller is saying it and the channel is supporting it by allowing the caller to persist. And sometimes these bad faith interlocutors do that sort of thing with creators they disagree with.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting for the kids to seek to engage with that space, only because they, like, I've learned so much from it, but, I don't want them to learn the same things as I've learned, except for maybe the humility to constantly reflect. Like Ian themselves, they've undergone a journey just in the year I've been listening to them. and their positions have changed. You know, they've moved toward, like, happily toward virtue ethics, which is essentially stoicism. And, you
Mm.
know, like, longtime listeners of us will know that, like, you know, me reading up on and being interested in the Stoics is what sort of started my own journey towards self-knowledge. That included me learning that I'm ADHD and has had all sorts of, like, wonderful sort of trickle-down effects in my life. I still journal every day without fail. And so they see that I've internalized that sort of constant reflection. And these call-in shows, even though the conversations recycle to a certain extent, hearing the variations on the themes, just like listening to classical music, is I think it's a very intriguing process. And so whether or not they want to stick with it, it doesn't matter to me. I was just tickled that they were so enthusiastic about engaging with it at all. And they do
Yeah.
love listening to the crash outs, because when people get angry about stuff like religion and gay people, it can be very, very funny.
And it led to a really interesting conversation about how there is no necessity to believe in an all-powerful God, about how, you know, there are many conceptions of God that are not all-powerful, but that when you do make a claim for an all-powerful God, it sets you up for some extra challenges. And
Yes.
we had an interesting discussion with Jaeger about that. Just kind of how
Yes.
the arguments can go one way or the other.
Yes.
And I'm on the record, I can't listen to those shows as long as you do, but
Sure.
it was still super fun. And I wasn't there when you started. Was it like, did you consciously plan to try them out with them? Were you just listening to one and they liked it more than you expect? Like, how did it, like, get going?
No, I just started, like, I had it on my iPhone from when I was at the gym one time, and it just automatically plays sometimes when CarPlay starts up when I start my car. And it started going, and it was in the middle of a crash out. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to stop this. I was like, hey kids, do you want to hear somebody get really angry about how they themselves can't justify X, Y, and Z? And the kids were like, sure. And then they hear it and they're like, and they were like legitimately entertained.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So on the drive, we also had a conversation about the podcast and ended up talking about the biggest issues that we feel like we're facing as parents. And I brought up intentionality as a parent. And I don't know if this resonated with you at all, but so many things on this trip made me think about it. Because for me, I think the hardest thing I face on the, like, day-to-day as a parent is that I know the more intentional I am, the better things go.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't feel like I have the brain space to do it.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like constantly.
Do you think it's like a fatigue thing? Like it's just like literally it takes energy and that is what you wish you had more of?
Yeah, I mean, partially. I think it's also just like bandwidth. You know, we have this construction project going and it requires, you know, kind of being on top of and thinking ahead on a lot of things. And there's sort of always those things that are fighting for space. And so going home, my mom is just like an amazing parent. And I feel like a lot of the reason she's so amazing is because of her intentionality.
Sure, yeah.
And a perfect example is like, I mean, it's just in everything she does. Like last week, I talked about how she had supported some people in ways that I wouldn't even think of. And like, it all plays into the same thing. You know, she has a like a video call with the kids once a week when schedules allow. And it's not like she just shows up to talk with them, right?
No.
Like she shows up with activities to do.
Science experiments.
Like topics to discuss. If they brought something up, she's researched it and like come back with things to show them. Like there's a whole plan. And that is who she is. And it's how she approached my entire childhood, which is wild. Like, that's wild. And we see it when we visit her because she remarried once I was like much older and even like out of college, right? So I technically have a stepbrother, but like that's the weirdest stepbrothers, but that's like the weirdest way to look at it because we were all full grown-ass adults when we met for the first time. So it doesn't have that like, family feel. But they're great. But we often see one of my stepbrothers when we're in town and he has kids and, they go over to their house a lot and she has like toys ready for them that she gets out every week for them to play with, activities to do. And it goes great because she's like spent all this time planning to make things lovely for them, right? And I got it out. When I became a parent, she made me a recipe card pack.
Yes.
With parenting advice. And I sort of feel, thinking about it, I was like, I think I've fallen down on all of these. But looking at it again, I don't think that's true. Like, and maybe I'll start like bringing these up as a little bit of a segment because they're all so wise. But I'm just trying to look for one. Let's see. This is a good one. They're numbered. Numbered 3 applies. Let's see. I'm looking for... Okay, these are like all amazing. I have to read these again. But the one this is sort of the one I was thinking about. So card number 3 says, use all that you are to be a parent. Specifically, use every ounce of creativity you have. It can make things fun and simple. You did not want to sit at the table to eat for a stretch of time when you were a toddler. Your dad suggested we eat on the floor. We had picnics every night. And, I also have remembered talking with my mom, like parents will complain that their kids have a hard time sitting at dinner.
Yeah.
And like when we went out to dinner, she would bring card games. She
still does.
Books to read, like all these things. Like I was a very mature kid who could like handle sort of sitting quietly for a long period of time.
Sure.
But like she also just set up the environment to make it all
just
work.
In case. Yeah.
And I just think you see it. Like kids do really well when you like provide all the tools for their success.
Yeah. It also boosts their confidence socially. I think part of the reason why, Reader and Jaeger are such good travelers and go out to dinner so easily is because they've been I guess nature, they might be more patient than other kids, but also they've been conditioned to kind of just slow themselves down, through that. And like when your mom is out to dinner with us, one of the things she likes to do is to play a version of Hangman she calls Hang Haman, as in like the villain in the Esther story. And it's just tracking the clues that the kids have come up with over the years, and
it was so good when Jaeger couldn't spell.
I was about to say, yeah,
because it made it like such a wild challenge.
It was so hard. It was like this insane version of Wordle. I mean, but now I know now it's kind of over because now Jaeger can spell better. It makes me sad, but still, I think it's contributed heavily to their confidence in those. I don't want to say high pressure social situations, but it's not. But still, I think it helps.
Push back though, because we were not the same. This is the thing, like. I mean, one of the things that I felt good about is like flipping through these cards. I was like, I am not like even 50% as intentional as my mom was. But like flipping through, I'm like, oh, there are like other areas where this applies. But like, we don't do that when we go out. We just make them like sit their asses down.
Yeah, but I think they've also had this childhood where it isn't always that. And I think that having that sort of interaction when we're out sometimes has modified their expectations or their sense of self-perception. I don't know. I'm kind of riffing here, but I'd like to think that it has had this positive impact on them. You know what I mean? Like they feel cared for, they feel seen, they feel safe. At the very least, they're not just set down at a table and left to their own devices. Now, when I was a kid, my parents' version of that was just having conversation. Like when we were out, we would talk. Like I wasn't kind of off in La La Land or whatever. You know, I was a part of a group. And then we look around, we were at some restaurant, I forget where, but we were eating out over the trip, and there was a family where the kids had like headphones on and iPads and were totally checked out. And Jaeger looks over and you can just see on his face like, man, I'm glad that's not me. And then he actually literally said that, like, I think it's really cool that we don't need to do that. You know?
Yeah. And I was even thinking about it on the way back.
And also, hang on a second. And also, it must be said that it really is no judgment on, some families, the kids, if they have a hard time socially, parents, to get a break, especially, sometimes need to do certain things to set up certain situations for the kids to be able to disengage or to process. I totally get that. Not every family is the same. This is not a judgment, but it was just something where Jaeger in that moment looked over and said, that's not my experience. And I'm so happy that I have had this opportunity or this predisposition to just sit up and like look at other people and speak to them even at this age. And I feel like my thoughts are valuable and I feel heard and seen. And every family is different.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that, because exactly,
Yes.
Kids are different. That could have just been like a long day.
Right. And also if the kids are, on the spectrum such that, they need to have that sense of isolation in order to feel safe and, to be able to better manage themselves, I totally get it. I taught kids for years. And, some of them had the cans on when they were in class. You know what I mean? Like it is something that is a reality for a lot of families, and there's no judgment at all. In fact, quite the opposite.
Also, we're really lucky that the kids like interesting foods, because like that also makes the experience engaging.
Yes.
If you don't, then like it would be a totally different scene.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I mean, I was even thinking about it on the drive back, because like we have to drive through Chicago to get home from my folks. And it's like this whole stretch where it's like complete pain in the ass to get off to use the bathroom.
Yep.
And I think the like only time we like got mad at each other on a road trip is when you didn't get off when I thought you should. And it was like hard finding a bathroom. And so for the first time in like, I don't know how many times we've done this drive, I was like, I should look up the last rest stop before Chicago, because the issue is like it always comes too soon and it feels like we shouldn't stop quite yet because it's like we don't really need to, but it is the last rest stop. And we do need to. And I looked it up and I was able to just be like, this is the one. Get off. But it hadn't occurred to me. And I feel like so many, it's like, I mean, last night, Jaeger told me to come up and tell him to go to bed to like stop him reading.
Yeah.
Did I do that? No, I
No.
didn't. I forgot to set the alarm on my phone. Like, I intend to stop screen time before dinner for them to do other things. And I just like let the time stretch out.
Mhm.
Like during COVID when there were long waits, at
Mhm.
like borders and we'd have to get, COVID tests before traveling. Like I would bring a book to read if we were in a long line, but like
Yeah.
not much else. It probably
Mhm.
would have been a lot, nicer for them if I'd had like a ton of stuff to do.
Sure.
So I don't, but I do think there's something lovely about those moments where you just like find something in the moment to cope. I mean, when we went to the UK with your folks,
Mhm.
we had this like crazy train ride because
Oh my
of
gosh. Yes.
thinking of them right now with like the current heat issue.
Yeah.
But we went during another like time where there was crazy heat and like most of the trains
It's
couldn't
called
run.
a heat wave, love.
Heat
It's
wave,
called a
thank
heat
you.
wave. You're welcome.
And like most of the trains couldn't run and we were stuck on this crowded train and we couldn't even sit down and just like working it out. Like, I think we were looking for sheep, we were looking for different things and like hadn't prepared, but like I'll still always remember that as in some ways like really special. So I don't know, but I just, when we were talking about like the biggest thing, like this is often the thing that haunts me at the end of the day of
Mhm.
like, if I had just had time and brain space to put in this extra level of work, like things legitimately would have been better. Do you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
and like on a certain level, life is life and like
Yeah.
you're living the existence you're living.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I mean, does this haunt you the way it haunts me?
No.
No. You're like, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what it comes down to is we agree on so many aspects of parenting, but in that we have definitely have different parenting styles. Like I don't like because I didn't have that like your mother's energy as a part of my childhood. I I don't hold that up as a I don't think it's necessarily a slight on my parenting to not do that. That's something some people do. But I don't, but that for me is not necessarily the ideal because that's not what I was raised with. And I think, my parents raised me successfully. I'm a moral person and I think my kids are, and their success in life is my top priority. And I think that makes me a good parent. And I don't feel like my parenting is necessarily missing that. Do I lament that, I don't have time to do other things with them? I wish we had more time to be able to do more things. But I also know that, and this is from them, that they really appreciate what we do for them. They don't feel like they are missing out on life or that they're being mishandled. And I think that matters and that I'd like to think that they have at least that degree of self-knowledge such that they can tell us when they're feeling, not seen, when they're feeling invisible or second. So I don't know. I don't think that it's on my priority list as much as it is yours. I wish we could play D&D more, but that's more about, reader not necessarily having the enthusiasm to play as often as Jaeger and I do.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
It's okay. It happens. We're working through it. And, reader still wants to play and wants to be a part of the next campaign, is excited about their next characters they're going to create. Like, it's fine. It's fine. It's just that I think this is a moment where I need to identify my anxiety is my anxiety and my expectations is my expectations, and not necessarily make my anxiety and my expectations this sort of, ideal that I need to hold myself to. It's just sometimes what I'm feeling in the moment, and sometimes the things that I care about without necessarily thinking about what the kids care about for themselves. Which, sometimes we need to care about things the kids don't care about because it's important for them to do certain things in a certain way, in a certain time frame. But when it comes to the other stuff, like the enrichment stuff, they're busy kids. They're enthusiastic about doing their activities. And they're getting great grades in school. I don't know what else I could ask for from them. And so I tend to give them a little bit more leeway. And I don't think that I need to curate their time as much as I would if they weren't that way already.
Yeah. Speaking of D&D, while we were home, my dad and his significant other got us, what do you call the card deck?
I forget. It's really cool.
Anyways, it's this like card deck for D&D, and you pull cards and they're
modifiers. They do things in your game world that might not otherwise happen.
Yeah. And if you don't know, right now, a new season of Vox Machina is airing.
Yeah.
And if you haven't checked out that, you absolutely should, because it's brilliant. And the one hard thing about the trip is we had to stop watching, even though the new episodes were coming out. And we got back and immediately watched a couple. And the deck shows up in the show.
Yeah, that was real cool.
It was so wild.
The kids kind of had to do a spit take about that one.
Yeah. Okay. The second thing I want to talk about is I feel like the opposite side of this, where I feel like we've been incredibly intentional.
Sure.
Okay?
Okay.
So what I wanted to talk about is, and I feel like one of my mom's cards applies to this as well. Let's see. Okay, this is sort of it too. So her card number 4.
Okay.
It is your
card
job.
Number 4.
It is your job to make an impression. Too many parents abdicate this role because they don't feel qualified. You should expose your child to all sorts of things that interest and amuse you.
No problems there.
No problems there. But what I wanted to talk about is and in so many ways, my parents were exceptionally better parents than I was.
Mm.
But in maybe just in this way, I feel like I have a little leg up on them.
Okay.
Because one area where I feel like I've tried to be really intentional, and I think you are too, and I think listening to the call-in show with the kids is a great example.
Sure.
Is there are things I want to talk to the kids about.
Yeah.
And I try to do it as much as possible.
Okay.
And I think there is this feeling that it is best to wait for your children to come to you with questions about things before talking about them.
Okay.
And I think when your kids come to you with questions, that is a great time to talk about something, right? Because they're already engaged and wonderful, right? Nothing wrong with that. But I was thinking about it because when I was young, my dad and I were so close.
Yeah.
I felt like there was nobody who understood me better. I talked to him about tons of stuff.
Uh-huh.
I felt like we shared a brain. I felt like our brains worked in the same way. As I've gotten older, I've realized there are more differences than I thought. But we were just very, very tight.
Yeah.
And I talked about when I realized I wasn't religious and how I went through a deep period of tons of anxiety that I might be wrong, that I might be going to hell, all this stuff, right?
Oh, man, Pascal's wager.
Yep, Pascal
what
myself.
If you're wrong? Clutch the pearls. Sorry.
Yep, just hoisted.
I hate Pascal's wager. It's so
hoisted
ridiculous.
myself on my own petard. And so you would think, and I was also really close to my mom. You would think that I would bring this up with my parents.
No.
And be like, hey, I'm worried about this. Like, what do you think?
Mhm.
And it was only on one of our last visits, well, like in the last 5 years, let's say, that I was
Sure.
talking with my dad, and we
Mhm.
realized that, like, he also wasn't very religious, but he was more spiritual, and not like hippy dippy spiritual, but he was into like tarot cards and the occult and all of that stuff, right?
Yep.
And it was really at the same, and his
Mr. Crowley.
yeah.
Bo, bo, bo.
So and
Da,
and his
da, da,
girlfriend
da, da. Sorry.
is like the hard atheist and kind of was like, what the fuck? Can we just, look at reality here?
Sure.
I think I'm characterizing that correctly. And so at the same time, we were both sort of realizing we were atheists, which is pretty interesting.
Sure.
And I never brought it up. And that's why I think it is our job as parents to just like bring shit up all the time.
Okay.
And I think I've been really good about bringing stuff up, but I just kind of wanted to talk to see, like, have a conversation about the random stuff that I think it can behoove us to just talk about, whether
Behoove. I love that word.
kids want us to or not. And I've been thinking about it this week too. So just like something. So one, I think like sex and puberty and all of that, like some kids are going to ask those questions and some kids aren't.
Sure.
And so like it's a very basic thing, but I think it's our job to make sure that we just make sure our kids know that information.
Yes.
And I was thinking about it because I got a lot of books to read with the kids, and I did it with Reader, and then I did it with Jaeger. And I'm now remembering that when I did it with Reader, they did not want to read like the sex parts of the books.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, I have to remember that because like we should go back and talk about some of that information that we didn't talk about. That Jaeger wanted everything. We read every single page. So like, I think that is very important. I think there's a lot more than the basics when virginity comes up.
Yep.
I talk a lot about virginity. I'm like, is the way we conceive of this even a good concept? It matters when you have vaginal sex because like there's slightly more risk, like there's the risk of pregnancy, which might not be present in other forms of sex. There's
Sure.
higher risk for certain STDs. So like it's very important to know consequences of that action.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey, we're like all obsessed with something where you can be a lesbian and have like wild, satisfying sex your whole life and never pass this threshold. So like,
Sure.
is that an important milestone to think about? And like, what are other milestones of like sexual experience could we be thinking about? And I think that's important because I think people get like hung up. Like I felt really, kind of like unwanted and bad because I was a virgin for such a long time, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's important to talk about how these are like bigger experiences than some of these, in many times, kind of patriarchal systems that we put on it. So I think that's important. I think, the other thing that I was thinking about this week is since we have two white male-presenting children,
Mhm.
We've definitely had the conversation of like, police are going to treat you differently. And if you are out with friends who are people of color or who are more, in more marginalized groups,
Mhm.
like simply your presence could potentially make that a safer situation for them.
Sure. Yeah.
So like if you're doing something bad when you're a teenager and cops get involved, if you run away and leave your friends who are more marginalized, like that is not okay. Like it is
Yeah.
better to get in trouble and to potentially make that situation safer for them.
Yes.
But I was just thinking about it because on social media, have you seen the reports about that young man who died on a trip with his friends?
No.
There was a young Black guy. I'll post links to it. I'm so sorry I'm not forgetting his name. Like, all thoughts to his family. But he was this young, mixed Black Asian young man, I believe in college, who like went on a trip with all of his white friends. They went to an island. He disappeared.
Oh
His
my.
white friend said, we thought he was off with the girl, so we left. Like, didn't make sure he was okay, didn't check in, and then they've found his body. He is dead.
Yeah.
Before they found the body, all those young white men wiped their social media and got lawyers.
Oh my gosh.
So there are a lot of creators, white and black, but particularly black creators being like, this is what we're talking about.
This is messed up.
And then there's this great creator who does a lot of comedic stuff. He dresses up as like Satan and Jesus and does skits about Trump. But I saw a video from him today, which I'm going to show the kids, because I've talked with them about it in terms of like police situations. But he made a video as a white person being like, just in general, like, you stick with your friends who are people of color. Like, if you are bringing them into a social situation, like, you stick by them because you don't know what's going to go down. And so I'm like, okay, we have to broaden this conversation now. Like, so I'm going to show them that video, and we're going to keep talking about that as they get older. I think we brought it up a ton of times, and excluding those situations where, parents are like worried with a young child that if they tell them they're an atheist and the kid says something that could have like extreme repercussions for the family and in their community, excluding those very complex situations, I think it's important to talk about your belief or non-belief.
Yes.
And I think there's a way, I don't think we should do that in a way that makes kids scared to present a different opinion. Like, I don't think we should put down all people of belief where if our kids feel differently, they're scared to come to us. But I think it's important to tell your kids what how you approach those issues and how you came to those conclusions.
Sure.
I think it is important to talk about body size, like particularly now we're swinging like way back to like heroin thin chic. And I think it's really important to talk about how all body sizes are okay, about how, you can't tell somebody's health by how big or small their body is.
Sure.
I think it's...
Can we also just sidebar like this? I grew up in the 80s. There's like some nostalgia I feel for the 80s. One thing that I think needs to be left to die, literally, is the R slur. And it's really making a comeback, and I really dislike it. It's like, a comedian who essays people and then, hello, Louis C.K., I'm looking at you, and then decides that they can, or like Kevin Spacey, that they can just come out of retirement when they want, when it's appropriate. No, the R slur needs to go away because it's a slur. It doesn't get not slurry just because it's been a minute. Anyway, you were saying about body size and, health and, that whole thing. I'm sorry. I don't know why. I just had to bring that up.
That too. I mean, I know you've been great about talking about your neurodivergence with the kids. Are there other things where you're like, oh man, I'm so glad I talked about this, or these are things I want to touch on at some point?
Are you talking about just like from my life or experience?
Just like, or not from your life or experience, just things that like matter to you.
I think the importance of being an educated voter, learning civics early, again, philosophy, but also, logic, kind of calling back to the very beginning of this whole, not this episode, but our podcast period. The idea of being really critical about the things you believe. I want them to constantly question, and it feels like it's tiresome, but it's like any other muscle. If you exercise it enough, then it's strong for you as you need it. And a small amount of work doesn't feel like a big ask because you can handle such a load when under pressure. Like, you should be able, as a human, to look at the things you believe and evaluate them. Some people we're not ever encouraged to do that. And we see that all across, American society. And I don't want our kids to be that. And so that would be something that I will continuously talk to them about. And that's something that I've already obviously talked with them about. But I can't think of stuff that really matters to me that we haven't already discussed. Like, I feel like the deeper I get into parenting and the more that I learn about myself as I journal and, try my best to be humble and admit when I've done something wrong and to learn from my mistakes, like, the more I feel compelled to be an open book for the kids. And so, like, as things come up, as they bother me, as I learn them, I will increasingly just discuss it with them. Like, we're driving and I'll be like, hey, this is something, check this out. If you hear me talk about this, or if you see my behavior about this change, here's why. And I don't know if I think that's a good thing to do. I know some parents feel like they have a need to, sort of put up a wall, like almost like a social wall between them and their kids, so that they have this air of authority with their children, because that's what they feel like they need to maintain in order for the kids to respect them. But I've come to realize that humanizing myself and letting my kids come along with me on the journey, keeping the window wide open for them to see inside, that's actually kind of bolstered my relationship with them, if anything.
And I think, at one point I did a whole documentary about sex ed.
Yeah.
And I think with all of, I think the lesson from like really good sex educators is true for all of these things.
Sure.
Which is that it's like never one conversation. And you should never feel like
that's done.
Yeah. Well, one, it's never done. And also, like, you never have to feel like you blew it, because it's never like one time. It's not
that's
like,
so true.
Oh,
right?
I tried to bring this up and I didn't say it how I wanted. Like, you just go back to it again, you know? And also, like, kids are going to have...
That's something I have to work on, honestly, is that, and you see that and you hear me complain about it, that, I will get upset at myself for not having the perfect response. And I feel like I've gotten a lot better at that. But I know that, like, 2-3 years ago, that was something that still kind of bubbled up. And it really wasn't until I got my autism diagnosis that I started to accept how my ADHD and autism interplay with my sense of self-knowledge and self-worth, how I value my ego in relation to others, and what all that means as I attempt to lead kids into adulthood.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of coming back to stuff.
Yeah.
We had the most fascinating realization with Reader. Because I think one of the things that sort of like set me on this path was the fact that we had such a hard fertility journey. So, like, when the kids are like, how are babies made? It like was never in my consciousness to be like, oh, this is just a simple story of like the stork or sex. I was like, let's get into it. There's this way and there's that way. And you can need IVF and you can need a surrogate and some, you know what I mean? Like, and all different people might face these things in different ways. Like, I think that sort of like set me on this path.
Sometimes you just need a harem like Superman.
Exactly. And so we've talked with the kids a lot about that, right? And Reader knows that they were an IVF baby and they were frozen for a while. But like, we've told the story so many times, and it was just like a couple weeks ago when we realized that Reader thought they were a donor egg, a donor embryo. And we had to be like, no. You
are biologically our child.
Yes, dad's sperm, my egg, just had to do this other stuff. But like, just talking about like the need to like...
All this time, they thought they were like adopted.
Yeah.
This is wild.
And I mean,
Yeah.
we definitely explained it, but just like that good reminder of like, we might have talked about it years ago, but
Sure.
they might have only understood so much. And like, just the need to keep having these conversations. And like, I don't know what they were thinking, because we've definitely had a conversation where I'm like, oh my God, you have my mom's eyes. Like, I don't know if they thought we were just being
joking. Like,
absurd.
wow, isn't it lucky that your eyes are like, you know, your grandmother's? Yeah.
Yeah. Or, you know, like we were just at my mom's place and there's a drawing of me when I was sleeping as a kid. And you're like, oh my God, Rita looks so much like you. But yeah, so it's like...
I still can't believe that they thought that for all this time, that they are not.
I think they knew at one point, you know, but I think like stuff gets jumbled. So...
Sure.
But yeah, it was shocking. Shocking, I say. So yeah, but all the things, just when you have the energy, talk about all the things.
Yeah.
Hey, it is Moms from the Future. I feel like I can't get through one of these without realizing that there's so much more I wanted to say, but I had to jump in here with just a couple of little things. First, we didn't cover nearly as many topics as we could have for conversation. You can look in the show notes to see even more that I thought of. A big one that came to me after recording was just talking about like being in a capitalist system and making sure your kids know that people's value doesn't have anything to do with how much they can or do earn, and a lot of stuff about kind of what it's like to be in the workforce. But yeah, there's so much. Life is so full of so many things. Also, I just want to say that like the kids aren't always down to hear everything. Like Reader will very often just kind of like walk away from us when they're done processing whatever we're telling them. So that is totally fine. Then you just pick up at some other time when like a book or movie or something in the news or something you see on a drive gives you a moment to kind of jump back into something. And finally, just thinking about the bandwidth and intentionality conversation, I just want to say that like, I think the underlying tension for me of all of that is that I don't want to spend all of my creativity on parenting. And if I didn't do this podcast, if I didn't try to do any sort of volunteer things out of work, you know, I would have more time. And I don't know if that would be better, but my current working principle is that I think it's important for kids to also see the other things that their parents care about, you know? And I know for Pops, that's really his writing. And so I think there's always a tension between those things. And I didn't want anyone to feel bad about making the decision to divide that attention, because it is certainly what I have done while also trying to pour a huge amount of love and attention into my kids. So had to say that. And that's it. Well, I'm going to thank Jonathan Zalbin and First Frame Music for the music for this podcast.
And that wraps up this episode of The Family Skeptical, where nothing is sacred except for our kids.
Yeah!
We survived!
We did it!
And the background noise wasn't so bad.
No.